Hi, everyone. This is Len Rainier with Wealth and Wisdom Institute. I want to thank you for taking some of your time today. Today, we would like to discuss with you some a different look at qualified plans. Qualified plans is one of the main traditional thinking solutions for just about everybody in the United States in trying to plan for their financial future. But we have a very important question to ask everyone today, and I think everybody listening should have an opening statement that is powerful and strong because our communication is the first step in the sale. I want to ask everybody today to get a statement like that ready, and I have one to share if you would like. I like to open up by asking a question of what do you see? More importantly, what don't you see? You see, we're entering into a moment in time and an opportunity to reassess and redefine our planning process. And in order to move forward, we must discover the things we don't see. In life, most accidents and lost opportunities are the results of things we don't see. The question is, how many opportunities have passed us by simply because we weren't aware of them? And the barriers in our lives are the result of only knowing what we know and seeing what we only see. Moving forward, we can't do the same things over and over again and expect different results. It's time to redefine the planning process. You see, we can't go back to day one in our lives and make a brand new beginning, but we can start today and start a brand new ending. In the qualified plan discussion today, I simply want to take the challenges that we're facing and connect the dots to the right solution if it's at all possible. Today we want to talk about the traditional thought process in qualified plans. But the very important thing that we must understand is, and you can say this line to your clients, write this down. Mr. and Mrs. Client, we will never get to the right solution if we're having the wrong discussions over and over again. The challenges that we're facing today are very, very important to understand because we can't get to the right solution without understanding the challenges. And so today I want to share with you what you may see and what you may not see when it comes to the future. Only 1 in 3 Americans have nothing saved for retirement. The average 50-year-old in the United States has $60,000 saved for retirement. And the U.S. retirement savings gap is somewhere between $6.8 trillion and $14 trillion in shortage. And only 18% of the workers are confident that they have enough for retirement savings. In 2033, the Social Security benefits will need to be cut by 23%. This is according to the Social Security Administration. And if you get your annual statement from Social Security, this appears on the second page in the second paragraph. The challenges are overwhelming. And then we also must take into consideration that through bad luck, no luck, some luck, 51% of the workers today expect some type of inheritance to pad their retirement in the future. 25% of that 51% expect that inheritance to be 100% of their retirement. You see, we're in the battle for our future. We have to understand the challenges that we're facing. What do most of these challenges have in common that I just read to you? And what do we do to help them solve the problem? Well, almost all of these challenges are facing a lack of time and either preparing too late or not preparing at all. And if you get to be 54 or 55 years old, I was talking to a client and they said, well, Len, I've got $60,000 saved for retirement and I'm 54. I want to retire with $500,000. And the question in my mind was simply saying, this is going to be impossible. How do we do this? So I asked him a very important question. At 54 years old, are your parents still alive? And is there any possibility that they'll leave you $500,000 in inheritance? And the client said, well, no, not really. Not that I can expect. And I said, you know, sir, it would probably be easier for me to create that inheritance than it would be for you to get and gain $500,000 in the stock market in the next 12 years. You see, he's going to run out of time. And if we have the right discussion, we'll be limiting the amount of time that we have to solve his problem. And we could use this by simply investing in the family if they are still alive. You see, the time element when we use life insurance just disappears. We put that number in certainty from day one once they're approved, and that belongs to the client and the client's family. So today I want to talk to you about the qualified plans and maybe some other opportunities and some of the challenges when it comes to qualified plans. The first thing we have to understand is, if given a choice, Mr. and Mrs. Client, where do you want to start your planning? Do you want to start it at 100% taxable type of idea, or income tax or capital gains tax idea, or do you want to look at how we can build tax-free dollars in your future? The question remains, when we look at this, why is traditional planning pointing you in a direction that you really don't want to go? You see, the tax-free element, things that I can drive forward today for my client, utilizing life insurance, is only in the last column. This is the solution that they're waiting for and looking for, but nobody's having the conversation. I can drive forward the value of your family today. I can possibly increase the amount of inheritance you can expect with certainty. And we can use life insurance as the driving force in accomplishing these goals. You see, I can't drive forward the value of your 401k today. I can't make the rates of return go higher. We can't make the rates of return in your brokerage account get greater. And we have to understand that we need to have certainty now in the least amount of time. Many people don't have 20 and 30 years to plan their retirement. The defining moments lays this out very carefully in our discussions. Mr. and Mrs. Client, your money will never be worth more than this today. Take out a dollar bill and show it to your clients and say, here's the dilemma. This is the monetary unit I use to live on. The problem is, the longer I hold this monetary unit, the less value it has due to inflation. $1,000 today will have the buying power of $411 30 years from now. Defining moment number one, Mr. and Mrs. Client, is your money will never be worth more than today. We want to sink into their minds and get them to think that, you know what, me putting money away to a later date may not be the solution that I'm looking for. Defining moment number two is, due to increased spending in the government and the way the debt in our country, the increased dependency, the increasing larger number of people living in the United States expecting more government programs, this may be the lowest tax bracket you'll ever be in, the one you're in today. So if we take those two defining moments, Mr. and Mrs. Client, your money will never be worth more than it is today, and this may be the lowest tax bracket you'll ever be in for the rest of your life. Why is traditional thinking telling you to take as many of today's dollars as you can and throw it as far into the future as you can, where it will have less buying power and be taxed the most? And how long do you want to keep doing that? You see, the problem is that we can't continue to do the same things over and over again and expect different results when the time frame has changed so dramatically. We're not going to get the solutions we want because of the lack of time and the lack of inconsistency in traditional financial thinking's thought process. And we simply can't follow the same elements without coming up with new ideas to help them really solve the problem, not feed the problem into the future. You see, traditional financial thinking grossly underestimates the impact of economic trends and shifts in estimating future results. I know in my lifetime I've had two down markets, one in the mid-'80s and one in the 2000s. And it really interrupted the amount of money I wanted to have for retirement. Traditional thinking comes along and says, well, we can make that up with future rates of return. And that may be true, but historically that's not true. In the year 2000, the Dow was at 10,800, and the Dow went down about 30% in 1 year. It went down to 7,500, and it eventually made its way back up to 10,800. But it took 6 years to do that. Now, I was happy to get back to where I was, but the problem was I lost 6 years of time in the compounding of that money during those 6 years. I lost that totally. But we grossly underestimate the challenges that we're facing and the economic trends and shifts and the changes in the marketplace. I want to impress upon you that if you're going to learn anything, learn these 5 core elements. These 5 core elements are so important in the conversation in the very beginning to let the client think and understand how money works in their lives. The 5 core challenges that they're facing are risk, taxes, penalties, inflation, and the value of the dollar. These will impact any future planning that they are going to do. Traditional thinking comes along and says, hey, all we have to do is put some money into a 401k and get a brokerage account, maybe take a look at your mortgage, and maybe we need a CD, and maybe we need, an annuity or two. But let me ask you one question. Does a 401k solve these problems of risk, taxes, penalties, inflation, and the value of the dollar? Or did I just describe to you what it is? You see, we have the challenge right in front of us, but we continue to give them solutions through qualified plans that mask the problems that they're facing of risk, taxes, penalties, inflation, and value of the dollar as this part of the solution. We didn't solve the problem they're trying to get away from. We compounded it into the future. So let's ask some basic questions about these core elements. Mr. and Mrs. Client, which of these 5 elements in your financial future do you want? Which of these 5 elements, Mr. and Mrs. Client, do you control? Now, they're going to answer, I don't want any of these in my financial future if it's at all possible. So why is traditional thinking telling you to take your money and put it into something that you don't want and don't control? It's a simple question. When we start tearing this apart, the taxes, regulation, inflation, and depreciation of the dollar, there's no opportunity to gain value there, only to lose it. The question also is, will these factors be better for you in the future or worse for you in the future? The other element is risk, taxes, penalties, inflation, and the value of the dollar is controlled by others, not you. You see, in order to solve the problems that we're facing in the future in qualified plans, we need to eliminate as many of these problems that they're facing as we can. So in our discussion today about qualified plans, I simply want to make it very simple. All of these slides are on our software, and I simply put them together this morning for our discussion. Qualified plans is just about on the tip of everybody's tongue when it comes to planning for their financial future. But remember, a lot of these qualified plans mask the problems you don't want as part of the solution. Let's ask some basic questions about qualified plans. Is a qualified plan account really a tax savings event? No, it's a tax deferring event. It's paying the tax to a later date. Do you believe that taxes will be lower in the future or higher? It's a great question, because we're compounding money out, putting it in maybe at a lower tax bracket at 10 or 15%, and then 20 or 30 years later, as our careers develop, we're making more money and we retire to a higher retirement income tax amount of 30%. So we put it in and got the deduction at 15, and we're taking it out at 30. What are the 2 guarantees in a qualified plan? Have some fun with this in this conversation. Don't make it so hard for them that they won't be able to understand this. But what are the 2 guarantees, Mr. and Mrs. Client, in a qualified plan? Well, in most cases, you're the only one at risk, and it's going to be taxed. Those are the two guarantees. What are the two guarantees inside a qualified plan for the government? Well, they get 10 to 20 to 30 to 40% of the amount of money you put in, guaranteed, and they take none of the risks. Well, I would like their guarantees. I would like their retirement plan on me rather than the one they're giving me. The next question is, when should I take money out of a qualified plan? Well, that's a good question. I have been told by many that I just have to wait till I'm 65, 66, 67. When should I take money out of a qualified plan? When taxes are the lowest, not the highest. When is that? Well, that might be today, but I'm not telling them to do that. I simply want them to think about this. When should I take the money out of a qualified plan? If you have a dormant old IRA sitting there in their portfolio, that should be open game. Yeah, you're going to pay a 10% penalty, and you're going to pay the taxes on it anyway. But see, you know what? You're going to pay the taxes now or later anyway, so what's the difference? The real deal that we're dealing with here is the 10% penalty. When you signed up for that qualified plan, did you check the 30% guaranteed loss box or the 40% guaranteed loss box? Well, Lynn, I don't remember any of those boxes when I signed up. Well, the day you activate it and start taking the money out, the government's going to start charging you a tax on all that money, whether it's 10, 20, 30, 40%. It's going to happen. Now, obviously, the question is, well, you could have a Roth, and I like Roth, but you're limited to what you can put in. If I could tell you the exact day that your retirement account is going to suffer its greatest loss, would you want to know that day? Then, in knowing that day, if I could do something now to prevent some of those losses, would you do it? The day you activate that account is the day it's going to suffer its greatest losses, in most cases, because of the tax, because of the lost value of the monetary unit, and any other regulations that they can throw at us in the future. One of the final questions I like to ask them, and it's just for fun, is a qualified plan financing you and your future or the government's? Remember, they got all the guarantees on it without any risk. So the question is, do you have a 401k or a 401g? Well, Lynn, I think it's the 401k. Well, you're probably right. But the government's plan is much more attractive. They have all the guarantees. So when we look at qualified plans, we want the client to understand how they work. And there are other opportunities inside their lives that could achieve the goals, and we could eliminate some of the risk, taxes, regulation, inflation, and depreciation that goes along with investing in the stock market when it comes to our financial future. You see, the federal government understands this very clearly. And this is the federal budget data from 2014 to 2019, and income taxes from some of these plans. In 2014, they took in $1.7 trillion in income taxes. Okay? The government's 5-year plan was very simple. They want to increase their tax revenue from income taxes alone from 1.7 trillion to 2.5 trillion. That's almost a 52% increase. This screen is important to show your client. They have never seen this. But it brings to question in my mind, and should in theirs when you discuss it with them, look, if the government's goal is to increase their revenue by 52%, should we continue to try to defer taxes to a later date, understanding what the government goals are when it comes to the taxation of that plan? And then we have to ask the question, are we feeding the problem or solving the problem, not only in your personal financial future, but is the government solving the problem by increasing their tax revenue and still estimating that the debt in 2014 was 17 trillion 8, and even though they're raising their revenue by 52%, it will increase to 21.6 trillion dollars in 2019. The Congressional Budget Office came out with revised editions of this and says by 2025 to 2026 will be at $30 trillion if nothing changes. And hopefully there's some changes on the way, but we still have to prepare for the challenges that we're facing. The big question is here, do we still want to defer taxes to a later date, understanding what is historically going to happen? So the question when it comes to qualified plans is this. We need to have the client understand exactly what's going on in their lives, and if we don't allow them to look around and see what's going on in their lives, they'll never change. They'll continue to do the same things over and over again and expect different results, because this is the marketing of the industry. All you have to do is overfund that thing. All you got to do is put all the money you can into that, and that's fine when the market's really good. And we're coming into an era right now where the market, we've got thousands of new people coming into our industry that have never experienced a down market. In the last 5 or 6 years, there's been thousands of new people coming into our industry that expect this market just to continue doing what it's doing. So you have to understand also that, 6 or 7 years ago, we understood very clearly that the market must go up. Number one, how is it measured? It's measured in volume. Well, in the year 2000, according to the Federal Bank of St. Louis, go to their site and look up this term called FRED. In circulation, according to the Federal Bank of St. Louis, the Federal Reserve Bank, there was $561 billion in circulation, and today there's $1.4 trillion in circulation. So the question is, if the government simply doubled the amount of money in circulation today, wouldn't the market go up? You see, since 2000, there's been an increase in the circulation amount of about 126%. Since 2000, there's been an increase in the marketplace about 28%, 29% growth, actual growth. There's a correlation between the two. That's all we're trying to say. So let's ask the client some basic questions in a 3-minute conversation with them so that they get a better understanding of how their money works and how a 401k or a retirement plan is working for them. And it's a very simple situation when we go into the money matrix and ask them 12 basic questions. Question number 1, Mr. and Mrs. Client, if you could create the most perfect investment, what would it look like? Would there be a lot of risk involved? Yes or no? Why, no, there wouldn't. Would you like some guarantees in this perfect investment that you're creating for yourself? Why, yes, that would be a good idea. How about this? If you didn't trust yourself at all, would you load this perfect product up with a lot of penalties against yourself? Well, no, I wouldn't do that. Okay, let's go to the next set of questions. Would you want to be able to get to your money when you needed it? Yes or no? Well, I think that'd be a good idea. Would you want to protect it from creditors and unemployed attorneys? Oh, that would be a good idea too. How about this? For the first time in your life, would you like to create leverage in this most perfect investment? Would you like to create the most amount of wealth using the least amount of money? And let's add one line to this, in the least amount of time. Why, yes, I would. Okay, we're halfway done. Now, would you want the money to go tax deferred? Well, after this conversation, we need to think that out with them, right? But the answer right now would be yes. Would you want the money to be distributed tax-free? That would be a really good thing, wouldn't it? How about this? Would you like to use this most perfect investment as collateral for things you wanted to do in your life today? Meaning it had leverage and it had a collateral power attached to it. Well, that would be really good. All right, Mr. and Mrs. Client, we're almost done. Would you want the payments on this to be tax deductible? Well, that would be a good thing. How about this? If you became injured or ill, would you want someone else, since you were out of work, to make the deposits for you on a monthly basis. Well, that would be a good idea too, wouldn't it? How about this? If you died from that accident or that illness or that injury, would you want your money to go to your family and your heirs tax-free? Why, yes, I would. All right, Mr. and Mrs. Client, you have just created your perfect money matrix product. Let's take a look at what you're currently doing. Here are the 12 questions we asked you on the left-hand side. Here's 401k, IRA, brokerage accounts, your home, CDs, annuities. By the way, Mr. and Mrs. Client, all the things here in this column in red were things you didn't want. The things you wanted in your most perfect investment are in green. Let's take a look at what you wanted, Mr. and Mrs. Client. Why is what you're doing so different than what you want? Now listen to the words. Mr. and Mrs. Client, if we had a discussion today and we could get you 95% of what you wanted in your most perfect investment, 95%, is that the discussion you'd like to have? Or do you want to try to work today and find one more green area in all this situation here? You see, from their own mouths, they had told you what they wanted. And for the first time, maybe in their entire lives, they start to realize that the things they are doing through traditional financial thinking aren't really the things that they want. And most of these things will benefit the companies and the organizations first before it benefits the client. Remember the questions. Which of these 5 elements, Mr. and Mrs. Clients, risk, taxes, regulation, inflation, and depreciation of the dollar, which of these 5 elements do you control? And which of these 5 elements do you really want? And why is traditional planning pointing you in a direction that you don't want and you don't control? You see, we can come up with different ideas. We can solve the problems, and one of the most important problems that we're facing is time. Many people in the United States today are running out of time. Many younger people are still paying off college education loans. There's a solution to that too. But we have to start redefining our planning process and redefining our marketing approach. In redefining the planning process, we have to show them ways to use leverage inside their families. And I want to tell you this, the secret of this is expanding the planning efforts to the second generation of their family, if it's at all possible. And using life insurance to create the wealth with certainty in their future. The rich have been doing this for 100 years. They call it estate planning. We need to preserve the value of that family with leverage and certainty and clarity in their lives. They'll get it. As I say in the movie, build it and they will come. Show it to them. Show them a number that they can own in their future, their family, 2 generations in. Now what you're going to discover is this is something that they really want. What you're also going to discover is that with 2 generations of the family uniting to figure out a single solution, you're going to have multiple premium payers in this plan. They will own it, they will cherish it, and then that becomes the center point of all the planning that they were doing because they've ushered and insured their financial futures. And from there, you can start to say, since we've done the most perfect investment we could, and with certainty we put a number in your family's financial future, with certainty you own it. And we have solved the problems in many cases of risk, taxes, regulation, inflation, and depreciation of the dollar with this thought process. And we have conquered, in many cases, the element of time because that number, once that family member is approved, is certain. And I don't care if that person, well, I do care. I don't, if that person lives 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. You see, we have done it with certainty. They have achieved the financial goals that they're looking for. There's no guesswork. There's no risk. There's no taxes. Regulations are limited. We've solved the problem of inflation because the death benefit can increase and depreciation of the dollar. We need to redefine the planning process. And in cases where it's possible to do this, I believe you have an opportunity, let alone an obligation, to allow them to say yes or no to the idea. It might take 5 to 7 minutes of your time to walk them through this. But it will change their lives, and it will change your careers. It will increase your revenue. It will increase the number of referrals you're getting, and it will bring passion back into what you're doing in your financial world. This solves the problem of shortages in qualified plans. This solves the problem of looking at college planning, where you meet a client who's 45 years old and they got 3 kids just coming out of college and they spent $300,000 on college education, and that's a lot of money. That was a tough discussion to have, to get them to put the money away to put their kids through college, but they wanted to do it. Now the next conversation should be, how about if we could recapture that money? You see, you didn't lose $300,000 to the college, planning. You've lost $1.2 million in future revenue for retirement. That's the value of $300,000 at 45 to age 65. How do we bridge the gaps? How do we do financial restoration? Well, we move to 2 generations of the family. We find the center point of the solution. When the product becomes a member of the family, and the life insurance is a facilitator of the leverage and the certainty and the tax-free element that we're looking for. This is a great discussion. This does not take months to talk to a client about. This can be done in one conversation. Give them a chance to say yes or no to the ideas. They can continue. Once they've taken care of this most perfect product, it gives them the permission slip then, since the future is assured and insured, to maybe increase the amounts in their 401ks, to take the risk, to start a new business. It gives them the permission slip to do that because they've assured and insured their financial future. So with that, I want to, if anybody has any questions about what we discussed today, or where they might find all these elements, I've got all the screens, numbers, and everything, where you might find this on their software, and how to answer the objections up front, and what marketing pieces to use to go along with this. Just give me a call. You can reach us at our office, or you can call me on my private cell, 313-600-8651. That's 313-600-8651. So again, I want to thank you for your time. If you have any questions, give me a holler, and be looking forward to talking to you in the next 3 weeks. Have a great day. Take care.